Welcome to WeLearn, Virtual Learning Network. This is session number 7, Consumer Protection. The topics which we will cover under this session are Introduction, Evolution of Consumer Movement including Consumer Protection Laws, Consumer Rights and Responsibilities, Consumer Protection Act 1986, Monopolistic and Restrictive Trade Practice Act 1969. Coming towards the first topic, that is introduction. The consumer movement exercised a considerable influence on the social, economic environment of the business. The imperfection in both the product and the factor markets often result in some sort of exploitation of consumers. The legislative measures have already been taken by the central government to safeguard the interests of the Indian consumer. There is a growing concern about consumer protection in India, and we have a wide range of enactments to protect the consumers. Next topic is evolution of consumer movement including consumer protection laws. These are in order to protect consumer from unwanted and unethical practice by business people, the government has enacted different laws. And these laws are such as Sales of Goods Act 1930, the Drugs and Cosmetic Acts 1940, Prevention of Food Adulteration Act 1954, the Essential Commodities Act 1955, the Indian Standard Institution Certification Act 1952, Agricultural Product and Grading and Marketing Act 1937, the Standards of Weights and Measures Act 1956, and last is Prevention of Black Marketing and Maintenance of Surplus of Essential Commodities Act 1980. During the last 2 decades, many international organizations have been active in the area of consumer protection. The UN General Assembly adopted a set of guidelines in consumer protection, and these guidelines are as follows. Number 1, physical safety of consumers, protection of economic interest of consumers, consumers access to information needed to make informated choices, statutory measures for redressal of consumers, distribution of essential goods and services, satisfactory product aim performance standards, fair business practices, international cooperation in the field of consumer protection. So these are some guidelines which are adopted by the UN General Assembly for the consumer protection, how to protect a consumer. These guidelines are formed so that consumers will become aware how to get protected. Next topic is consumer rights and responsibilities. So first comes towards the consumer rights. What are their rights? What are the responsibility of the consumer towards the market, toward the industry? So coming towards the rights, there are few rights which consumers should follow, and these rights are for a long time. Certain basic rights of consumer have been recognized all over the world, and these are summarized as follows. Number 1, right to safety. What is safety and what are the rights? The right to safety means the right to be protected against marketing of goods and services which are hazardous to life and property. There are various risks involved in the consumption and use of products such as electrical appliances, drugs, pressure cookers, etc. So there should be a right of safety. Consumer should save himself or herself. Next are rights to be informed. The rights to be informed about the quality, quantity, potency, purity, standards and size and price of the goods and services so as to protect the consumer against unfair trade practice. He has got a right to have information in detail about the product, including its ingredients, date of manufacturing, technical specifications, etc. The next is right to choose. The consumer should be given the right to make evaluation of the alternative products and to buy the one which he or she chooses. Next is right to be heard. A consumer is to be assumed that his interest will receive due consideration at appropriate forums. The right includes the right to make protest against the defect in goods or deficiency in service provided to the consumer. Next is right to seek redressal. It means that the consumer has a right to a fair settlement of his claims. It includes the right to receive compensation or misrepresentation or shabby goods or deficient services. They have the right to express what they have told and what they are getting. The right to consumer education. It means the right to acquire knowledge and skills to to be an informed consumer throughout his life. The education is needed for taking action to influence factors which affect consumer decisions. Next are duties and responsibilities of consumer. As a consumer, we have two types of duties. Duties with respect to enforcement of rights and duties in relation to other consumers. So these duties are related to the rights of the consumer are it is the duty of every consumer to be careful while buying about the quality of the good. He is to ensure himself that the good which he is buying are not dangerous and get assurance from the seller that they are free of defect. The consumer should insist on getting all the information about the product or services before making a choice. This will help him in taking a decision whether to buy from a particular seller or from the other seller. The consumer should inspect a variety of goods before making a decision as to which one to buy. Of course, while taking a decision, he will compare weight, quality, price, durability, etc. of the goods of different manufacturer. Next is the consumer should form consumer association. Every person must be aware of his consumer association in some way or the other. The consumer should not hesitate because they have all the rights to ask about what are good for them and what are bad for them. Next, it is the duty of every consumer to make complaints to the appropriate authority for his genuine grievance. And the last responsibility of the consumers are every consumer should acquire knowledge about different rights and duties in some law or some other law. So these are some duties and responsibilities of the consumers which they should fulfill to acquire the best goods and services from the sellers. Next topic is Consumer Protection Act 1986. The main features of this act is it aims to provide better and all-round protection to the consumers. Number 2, it applies to the whole of India except the state of Jammu and Kashmir. It applies to all goods and services. It is very unique and highly progressive piece of social welfare legislation and is acclaimed as the Magna Carta of Indian customers. The Act has made the consumer movement really going and more powerful, broad-based, effective and people-oriented. It provides effective safeguards to the consumer against different types of exploitation such as defective goods, deficient services, and unfair trade practices. The enforcement of the right of the consumer. The Act has created special consumer courts. The Act provides simple, speedy, and inexpensive redressal of consumers' grievance relating to defective goods and deficiency of services. The complaint by the consumer need only to set out the grievance in very simple form and furnish the name and address of the opposite party against whom the complaint is made. The hallmark of the Act is that it has set a time frame for the disposal of case. Next is the Act allows filing of class action complaint on behalf of group of consumers having common interest. And the last is the Act also covers complaints relating to unfair trade practice. The last topic is Monopolistic and Restrictive Trade Practice, MRTP Act 1969. The MRTP Act was brought on the status with a view to ensure that the operation of the economic system does not result in the concentration of economic power to the common determinant and that there are no monopolies and no prohibited monopolistic, restrictive and unfair trade practice which are against the public interest. So coming towards the monopolistic trade practice, that is MTP. Under this Act, the following effects has been noticed. Number 1, maintaining price at a reasonable level so that everyone can afford the product, unreasonably preventing or lessening competition, limiting technical, increasing reasonability, the cost of production of any goods, and at the same time increasing charges of the provision or maintenance of any service. And last is increasing reasonably the price at which goods are sold or the profit which are derived by the production. Next is preventing or lessening competition in the production, supply or distribution of the goods. And the next act is restrictive trade practice. Another objective of MRTP Act is to prohibit restricted trade practice. The Act regulates in 3 ways. Registration of agreements concerning RTP, restraining persons from indulging in restrictive trade practice by the MRTP Commission holding an inquiry. And next is prohibiting resale price. The RTP Act defined to mean a trade practice which has or may have the effect of preventing, distorting or restricting competition in any manner, particularly when tends to obstruct the flow of capital or resources into the stream of production, and number 2, when tends to bring about manipulation of prices or conditions of delivery, or number 2, to affect the price free flow of supplies in the market relating to goods or services in such a manner so as to impose on the consumer unjustified cost or restrictions. Next is unfair trade practice. Unfair trade practice means a practice which for the purpose of promoting the sale, basically it is for promoting the sale, use of supply of any goods or for the provision of any service adopts any unfair method or unfair or descriptive practice including the practice mentioned below. These practices are misleading advertisement and false representation, bargaining, sale, hail and switch selling, offering gifts or prizes with the intention of not providing them, and conducting promotional contests, non-compliance of product safety standards, hoarding or destruction of goods. Following are the questions based on this session. These are: what is the objective of the MRTP Act 1969? List out few unfair trade practices mentioned under the Act MRTP. Discuss few points regarding consumer rights and their responsibilities. So these all questions are based on this session. Thank you. Happy learning, we learning.